started coming towards me, and then he lunged at me, and I started pulling the trigger, and it just kept coming.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury why you shot Doug.
I was scared to death. I thought he was gonna kill me.
As you sit here today, Ashley, how do you feel about what happened?
Horrible. He's the father of my child. So I'm gonna have to explain it all to her.
Ashley Benefield used to command the stage. Graceful, applauded, admired. But years after she left ballet, she was standing in a Florida courtroom, accused of taking the life of her husband, Doug Benefield, a Navy veteran and tech entrepreneur, and at the center of it all, a child custody fight and a marriage that never settled. Look, I've covered a lot of cases where relationships go sideways, but this timeline is absolutely surprising. Ashley and Doug met in 2016. He was 54, she was 24. They got married just 13 days after meeting. Doug had recently lost his first wife to heart failure, trying to raise his 15-year-old daughter, Eva, while dealing with the sudden loss of his wife, Renee, just 9 months earlier. Eva was the one who found her mother's body. This family was still picking up the pieces when Doug made the decision to remarry. The meeting happened at a Palm Beach home during a political fundraiser. Doug was there because he moved in those conservative donor circles, successful tech entrepreneur, military veteran, the kind of guy who gets invited to these events. Ashley was working the room as director of Women in Florida. Doug left for Israel on a business trip. Just 2 days after meeting Ashley, they spent the entire week texting non-stop. When Doug got back from Israel, they didn't just decide to get engaged, they got married 5 days later. Now Doug didn't tell anyone he was getting married. Not his business partners, not his family, and most importantly, not his 15-year-old daughter who was still grieving her mother. Ashley had been dancing professionally before a hip injury ended her ballet career. She had dreams of starting her own conservative ballet company, one that she said would promote family values and traditional roles. Doug supported it. Financially and emotionally, he helped launch her project, backing it with over $100,000 of his own money. Doug went all in on Ashley's dream. They called it the American National Ballet, and they promised the world to dancers who signed up. They recruited dancers from places like Germany, Argentina, and Estonia. Ashley and Doug were posting photos on social media of dancers holding signs that said, "It's official, I'm joining American National Ballet." But while Doug was dumping his life savings into making his wife's dreams come true, life at home was becoming a nightmare for Eva. Ashley immediately tried to step into a motherly role, and Eva wanted absolutely none of it. The tension was constant. Ashley would complain to Doug whenever Eva didn't obey her, treating it like some sort of competition for Doug's attention. And then things started getting genuinely scary. One day, Ashley found Eva's diary and decided to read through it. Eva had written about how much she hated Ashley and couldn't stand her. Ashley immediately ran to Doug with this information, and they had a massive screaming match. During this argument, Doug completely lost control. He grabbed one of their guns and fired it into the ceiling of their kitchen. He later admitted in court testimony that he did this to make her stop fussing. Doug also admitted to hitting their golden retriever Sully during one of his outbursts, and during another fight, he punched holes in the wall and threw a firearm toward Ashley. Still, 2 days later they threw themselves a formal wedding reception with all their friends and family. But the company struggled from the start. Ashley became pregnant and had what she described as a difficult pregnancy, so she stepped back from day-to-day operations. Doug was left trying to manage a ballet company he knew nothing about while dealing with complaints, late payments, and increasingly angry dancers. There were complaints, lawsuits, and tension among dancers. Doug allegedly tried to step in and help manage things, but it only made things worse. In August 2017, citing her difficult pregnancy, Ashley packed up and moved back to Florida to live with her mother. Not long after the launch, Ashley cut off communication, just vanished. left Doug holding the bag with dozens of angry dancers who weren't getting paid and a business that was losing money. On October 23, 2017, dancers were called into a meeting, told to sign non-disclosure agreements, and then half of them were fired. The company collapsed within months, leaving dancers stranded and Doug out over $100,000. Then came the restraining orders. Ashley filed multiple complaints against Doug in different states. She told courts in South Carolina and Florida that Doug had been abusive, that she feared for her safety. She also claimed he had been harming her with dangerous substances, an allegation that was never proven. She even started claiming that Doug had harmed his first wife, Renee. According to reports, Renee died of a heart condition while Doug was out of town on business. Ashley's paranoia got so intense that when she went into labor, she checked herself into the hospital under a fake name and told the medical staff that her husband had been trying to harm her and she was in danger. The hospital performed an emergency C-section 3 weeks early because they believed Ashley was a victim of domestic abuse. Doug didn't even know his daughter had been born. Ashley didn't put his name on the birth certificate. She kept the baby's existence secret from him for weeks. At the court, the judge said there wasn't a single credible evidence that Ashley had ever been harmed by dangerous substances or suffered from any illness related to such exposure. The judge found Ashley's testimony so unreliable that she essentially called her a liar in open court. Custody was split. Doug was granted time with their daughter, but Ashley never accepted that ruling. In November 2018, they sought marriage counseling. Ashley and Doug began spending time together again, going to the beach, having dinner, playing with their daughter. Doug even moved to a nearby apartment in Florida so he could be closer to them. He thought they were working things out. He was hopeful that they could finally be a family. But Ashley had other plans. In August 2019, Doug noticed Ashley was wearing an engagement ring, and it wasn't from him. He hired a private investigator who discovered Ashley was having an affair with another man. She was still legally married to Doug but planning to marry someone else. Doug filed for divorce. And that's when Ashley's accusations escalated again. More reports to law enforcement, more claims about Doug being dangerous, more attempts to keep him away from their daughter. The court ordered psychological evaluations, scheduled for September 30, 2020. 3 days before that hearing, Ashley suggested Doug come help them pack for the move to Maryland. When Doug came down to Florida in September 2020 to help them pack for a planned move to Maryland, he had no idea what was coming. He thought they were finally going to co-parent peacefully. He brought food for the family, he booked a rental car for their daughter, he rented a truck to help move their belongings. But that day, when Doug entered the Bradenton home Ashley was staying in, she had a handgun. Ashley had also canceled her therapy appointment that morning. Within minutes of Doug arriving, she had fired 4 times. Doug didn't survive. Ashley called 911. She told the dispatcher it was self-defense, said Doug had attacked her, that she feared for her life. Police showed up and found her sitting on the front porch with the gun still in her hand, telling the neighbor she'd shot her husband in self-defense. But when officers processed the scene, the evidence told a completely different story than what Ashley was claiming. According to official reports on the investigation, there were no signs of struggle on her body, nothing that would indicate someone had just been in a life-or-death struggle with a former Navy pilot who was trained in hand-to-hand combat. Doug was shot while he was at least 3 feet away from her. There was no gunshot residue on his clothing, which means he wasn't close enough to be attacking her. The medical examiner found that 1 bullet hit him in the chest, the fatal shot. Another hit him in the back of his leg, suggesting he was trying to get away. A 3rd bullet grazed his arm. The 4th shot missed entirely. Her only visible injury was a small scratch on her side, that the detective noted appeared to be at least a day old, meaning it happened before Doug even arrived that day. When they asked Ashley about it, she claimed Doug had deliberately body-checked her with a moving box earlier. Inside the house, Doug was found lying on the bedroom floor with no weapon near him, nothing that could be used as a weapon. If he had been the aggressor Ashley claimed he was, where was his weapon? How was he supposedly attacking her from 3 feet away? During the investigation, authorities reviewed the surveillance and location data, texts, emails, phone logs. They went over Ashley's timeline leading up to the incident. They discovered that Ashley had visited a gun range just 1 week before the shooting. She had also purchased a burner phone, rented a car, and contacted multiple attorneys in the days leading up to Doug's death. At the center of her claim was abuse. Her team argued she had lived in fear, that she had trauma, that Doug had allegedly threatened her in the past. But investigators didn't find anything to support that narrative. There were no police reports of domestic violence, no documented ER visits, no witnesses confirming abuse. Ashley had filed dozens of complaints over the years, but every single investigation had been closed as unfounded. Prosecutors pointed out the pattern. Doug had been granted partial custody despite Ashley's legal efforts. None of the judges had found her claims credible, and the shooting happened just 3 days before a court hearing where psychological evaluations were scheduled to be released. Evaluations that would have exposed Ashley's manipulative behavior. To the prosecution, the motive was control. They said Ashley didn't want to co-parent, that she wanted sole custody, that this incident ended that custody battle entirely, and they were right. Evie with Doug dead, Ashley got exactly what she'd been fighting for in court for years. They also shared evidence that Ashley had repeatedly moved between states, filed multiple complaints in different jurisdictions, and made unsubstantiated claims of harm. Ashley was arrested in November 2020, about 2 months after the shooting. She was charged with second-degree murder and held on $500,000 bond. But even then, she only spent 17 days in jail before posting bond and going home to live with her mother and daughter. Her lawyers maintained that she acted on instinct. That fear took over, that years of trauma shaped her response. But the prosecution had a witness, Doug's daughter Eva. Eva took the stand and destroyed every claim Ashley had made about Doug being abusive. She testified that she never saw her father yell at Ashley, never saw him threaten her, never saw any signs of the violence Ashley described. Eva described Ashley's behavior as temper tantrum-like when she didn't get her way. She testified about how Ashley tried to turn her against her own father, even going so far as to suggest that Doug had harmed Eva's mother, Renee. The jury deliberated for 6.5 hours before reaching their verdict. When they returned to the courtroom, Ashley stood to hear the decision that would determine the rest of her life. Guilty of manslaughter, meaning they believed Ashley intended to harm Doug but didn't plan it in advance. When the verdict was read, Doug's daughter Eva wiped tears from her face. She told reporters that she had prayed for that moment, for accountability, for recognition of the father she lost. The judge sentenced her to 20 years in Florida State Prison, and then added 10 more years of probation. Now Ashley Benefield's name is remembered not for ballet, not for elegance, but for a violent act. Doug Benefield didn't deserve to die. He deserved the chance to be a father to his daughters. He deserved the chance to learn from his mistakes and grow as a person. Instead, he became the victim of a woman who decided that if she couldn't control him through the courts, she would eliminate him entirely. Ashley Benefield didn't just destroy Doug's life, she destroyed her own daughter's chance at having a father, and Eva's chance at having the only parent she had left.